It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. Good morning. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, got interesting yesterday. The confirmation hearings have begun. First up, for Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth.
There's been no accountability for the disaster of the withdrawal in Afghanistan, and that's precisely why we're here today. Is that leadership has been unwilling to take accountability. It's the time to restore that to our most senior ranks.
You could hear the Democrat trying to cut in on him.
Yeah. He was really good about being consistent and getting his answers out there, which you need to do. Because the Democrats clearly wanted to make this about them. But, you know, all the fallout ended up being about them. That's for sure. Most of the fallout that I saw yesterday was on the Democrats, Tim Kaine, Elizabeth Warren.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it didn't seem to be on Hegseth at all.
No, he didn't get touched. Speaking of touched, I believe some of the Democrats may be touched. They don't get it.
No,
they never come up with a new strategy. I mean, it was interesting. I think it was at the Wall Street Journal that said the Democrats are talking like it's 1994 when it comes to women in the military. He said, Hegseth has been clear over and over again. I want the standards to be the same. Don't change the standards for a woman.
Anyone who can meet the standards,
right?
And that's fine.
And he kept saying it. It's like they kept pounding on as if it was back in 1994 again. And so that went nowhere. They really didn't get to him. I want to play this here because this was really interesting because, you know, they started talking about his tattoo. Good God.
Yeah.
Like I said, all I'm thinking of the whole time is, what do I care about in the Department of Defense right now? My number one thing? Are we spending hundreds of billions of dollars on aircraft carriers that can be eliminated very quickly with the hypersonic missiles of our enemies?
Right.
Or do we have a defense for it or not?
Right.
I know that's like practical, but and of course, you know.
Well, you're just a warmonger. I mean, forget that. You know, you're talking about the Department of Defense.
Yeah. But here's some of the tattoo talk. All right, here we go.
You'd mentioned that you were not able to serve with your National Guard unit in the protection of the inauguration of Joe Biden because of a tattoo, a Christian tattoo. Can you elaborate just a little bit on what is this very offensive, extremist, racist tattoo that you have?
It's a tattoo I have right here, Senator. It's called the Jerusalem Cross. It's a historic Christian symbol. In fact, interestingly, recently I attended briefly the memorial ceremony of former President Jimmy Carter on the floor of our National Cathedral. On the front page of his program was the very same Jerusalem Cross. It is a Christian religious symbol. And when the events happened before preceding the Biden inauguration, I was a part of the mobilization to defend that inauguration as someone who'd been a proud supporter of Donald Trump, but also a member of the military, had orders to come to Washington, D.C. to guard that inauguration. And at the last minute, those orders were revoked. I'd never had orders revoked before. I'd been on orders to a lot of places to do a lot of difficult and dangerous things. They were revoked, and I was not told why. Later, when I wrote my book, I was able to get information that was because I had been identified. Someone who'd served in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Guantanamo Bay, holding a riot shield outside the White House. I'd been identified as an extremist, as someone unworthy of guarding the inauguration of an incoming American president. And if that's happening to me, Senator, how many other men and women, how many other patriots, how many other people of conscience? We haven't even talked about COVID. and the tens of thousands of service members who were kicked out because of an experimental vaccine. In President Trump's Defense Department, they will be apologized to. They will be reinstituted with pay and rank. Things like focusing on extremism, Senator, have created a climate inside our ranks that feel political when it hasn't ever been political. Those are the types of things that are going to change. And Senator Sullivan, you mentioned that study. After a whole study was held, extremism working group study, 100 extremists were identified in the ranks of 3 million. And most of those were gang-related.
And then let's get to Mark Wayne Mullen, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen yesterday.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
This was actually humorous.
Yeah, it really was.
There we go.
It was
Getting some advice from our second in command.
Yeah, but I'm just making a point because there's a lot about qualifications. And I think it's so hypocritical of senators, especially on the other side of the aisle, be talking about his qualifications, not being able to lead the secretary or be the Secretary of Defense, and yet your qualifications aren't any better. You guys aren't any more qualified to be the senator than I'm qualified to be the senator, except we're lucky enough to be here. But let me read you what the qualifications of the Secretary of Defense is, because I Googled it, and went through a lot of different sites, and really it's hard to see. But in general, the U.S. Secretary of Defense position is filled by a civilian. That's it. If you have served in the U.S. Army Forces and have been in the service for, you have to be retired for at least 7 years, and Congress can weigh that. And then there's questions that the senator from Massachusetts brought up about serving on a board inside the military industry, and yet your own secretary that you all voted for, Secretary Austin, we had to vote on a waiver because he stepped off the board of Raytheon. But I guess that's okay because that's a Democrat Secretary of Defense. But we so quickly forget about that. And then Senator Kaine, or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia, starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No. But it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because the man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye. We've all made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And Jennifer, thank you for loving him through that mistake. Because the only reason why I'm here and not in prison is because my wife loved me too.
That may not be the best promotion of your resume, though. It's I don't know.
I had some questions on that last thing, but
I don't
very
know.
good moment.
Now, I will say this: the difference between a senator and a Department of Defense person is you have to be ready 24/7 to make an immediate decision about how to inform the president. You're in the chain of command of immediate military retaliation or immediate military reaction, which is different than a senator.
Right.
I'm not saying that a senator should be drunk when they vote, but you know what they reminded me of? You notice how they all laughed because they all know.
Oh, yeah.
They all know the senators that will go out and, throw down a bunch and then come back and vote on something. I believe that was in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, that they were always at the bar. I do remember a scene in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Now, I don't think Jimmy Stewart was drinking, but I think in Mr. Smith, I think that's there was that. There was that episode where they're all at the bar or whatever. Now, I don't know if they went immediately to vote, but that's what I remembered.
Right.
And they were all drinking. But there is a difference between when you're in the immediate chain of command of immediate military retaliation. But then again, the Democrats shouldn't care about that because they didn't care about Lloyd Austin being in the hospital, and nobody knew that he was in the hospital for 3 days.
Right. And when it was found out, nobody threw the Democrats in the Senate.
Nope, nobody cared.
They didn't throw a fit about that.
They didn't care. Nobody knew. that he was missing for 3 days.
Yeah.
Nobody knew it. If something would have happened, he would not have been in the chain of command.
Yeah.
And his deputy didn't know about it for 2 days.
Right. Wow.
So
still mind-boggling.
It really is. You shake your head in absolute disgust. And that's why I've said, any Republican, and you were telling me that where were you reading that Thune?
Yeah, it was about a week ago that CBS had 3 sources.
Oh, a week ago this was. Okay.
Yeah, it was about a week ago that CBS had 3 sources that Thune told Trump that he thinks the votes are there for Hegseth, that it's not going to be a problem. And then CBS News reached out to Thune's office, and they said, well, a couple of things we don't talk about. We don't talk about the whip count, and we don't talk about private conversations with the incoming president. So, but they didn't say no. Again, it would be hard for me to believe that we've gotten to this point if you still had a significant number, which it really only means, 4 or 5 in the GOP that are hard no votes. If that were the case and there were no path to confirmation, I think Hegseth would know that by now, and they probably would have made a decision, and you wouldn't have seen him go forward yesterday. I think he performed well yesterday, and Joni Ernst had to run from the liberal media after expressing that she was going to support him, and we don't know what that means. Does that have any effect on the other reported no votes in the Senate from the GOP? I have to wonder. Collins, Murkowski, I don't know. Those 2 specifically.
Collins, Murkowski, Curtis, McConnell are the ones I'm concerned about. Yeah.
I don't know about McConnell.
I would tend to think after yesterday, if McConnell did has reservations, and I've heard no reports that he has had, but his name came up because he's no longer speaker,
right,
and not a fan of Trump,
right.
But I would say afterwards, after yesterday's performance, look, the Democrats. He was able to answer the questions, but the Democrats were horrible.
Oh, yeah.
The Democrats were so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was able to answer the vast majority of the questions out there.
I think that the Democrats and what they did yesterday is going to have some influence on some of those. If they were indeed no votes, that handful, I think that could have a pretty strong influence on
there weren't a lot of military questions that were asked to him, though.
No. Just overall readiness, but
right,
yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But it was very, very general. But that's okay because you and I both know. He knows enough. He's smart enough to know he has military experience. He knows what the culture is. When you look at what the culture is right there, when you look at the DEI, everything in the military, he knows what has to go. There's really a number one specific purpose besides the day-to-day things that he has to do. But the day-to-day things, he'll be in consultation with the Joint Chiefs and the president.
Well,
and the president is the one that will give the order to do anything.
Yeah, from my perspective as an American citizen, I'm very okay with having someone who has been boots on the ground and having to ask some questions about being a newbie and at the admin level, as opposed to someone that's not new at the admin level having to ask questions about boots on the ground. And that's the difference with Hegseth.
Say what you want about Hegseth. Again, I'll say it again. Lloyd Austin was missing for 3 days.
Yep.
And he was able to contact and tell people, and he didn't view that as important.
Right.
If you rose to the level in the military that he did and still didn't know that what you were doing was wrong, you're unqualified.
Right.
He should have been out after that.
Right then.
And I have sympathy for his cancer. Doesn't matter. You cannot, and we said at this time, he needed to resign, and he didn't resign.
Right.
You can't do that. And the fact that he didn't resign, the fact that he did it and didn't resign is such an indictment that anything of Hegseth when it comes to, military protocol, sorry, Democrats have no talking points.
Right.
None. 866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Another potential Arctic blast arriving in the continental U.S. soon.
The one that is coming through late this week should bring down some of our coldest air of the season. By the time we get to next Monday, I'm expecting sub-zero temperatures pretty much everywhere north and west of a line from the northern panhandle of Texas into the Ohio Valley.
USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says when it comes to winter wheat growing areas impacted by this latest cold system,
where we have snow cover, not really a concern for winter wheat. Where we have gaps in coverage, that could be a problem. Temperatures should be in the minus 20 or lower range pretty broadly across the northern plains where we have a variable but mostly shallow snow cover. So also even some concerns there for the winter wheat crop.
Concerns also increase about livestock, water availability, and stress within animals with each passing and stronger cold system in impacted areas. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, I got to play this just for entertainment purposes only, all right?
Okay.
All right, Senator Sheehy questioning Hegseth yesterday. All right, here we go. All right.
Chairman. Pete, I'm actually going to ask you questions because I want to hear your answer. How many genders are there? Tough one.
Senator, there are 2 genders.
I know that well. I'm a Sheehy, so I'm on board. What is the diameter of the rifle round fired out of an M4A1 rifle?
That's a 5.56.
How many push-ups can you do?
I did 5 sets of 47 this morning.
What do you think are most important strategic bases in the Pacific?
In the Pacific, Guam is pretty strategically significant.
How many rounds of 5.56 can you fit into the magazine of an M4 rifle?
Depends on the magazine, but standard issue is 30, Senator.
And what size round does the M9 Beretta standard issue sidearm for the military fire?
A 9mm, Senator.
What kind of batteries do you put in your night vision goggle?
Duracell.
I love it.
Oh, my gosh, that was funny stuff.
Yeah. I have some, and I can't tell you. I would say the same. Duracell. I know that's the brand. They're not what you were asking, but
they're secret batteries.
Yeah, I can't tell you that. We can discuss this in closed chambers.
Yeah, I would guess with what he did yesterday, and again, you talked about the story from a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was, after they were done yesterday, they said, "Oh, okay, we're confident that he," and I was like, "Okay, they're not saying they actually have the votes,
Right?
The vote's supposed to be, I heard, next week is what they're looking to have.
Mm-hmm.
I would guess he has the votes. I would guess after his performance yesterday,
I would think
he
so.
has the votes.
Because again, typically what you see is if there is no path to confirmation, then he would bow out. But in fact, Thune, according to CBS, Thune, told Trump that he has the votes, that he actually has the votes.
Right.
That was a week ago. We'll see.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. Well, I woke up yesterday, and by the time I woke up and actually went online, so it wasn't right when I woke up, and a listener already sent this audio to me, and I'm like, well, thank you so much. And it's because it's something that we've talked about for a while, and it's actor Michael Rappaport, who really, as you stated, you started following him first and mentioned him on the show about when he's in New York City, about the crime and everything else.
Right.
And we've seen the evolution of him from a raving lunatic liberal to a raving lunatic more right.
Exactly.
I mean, and I'm saying that because his style has sort of remained the same.
Right.
But the transformation of him is what I find interesting. Is you and I have spent a lot of time since the election, and we did today. We read a couple of articles from Democrats talking about what the problem is of Democrats right now. But everybody, even if they know what the problem is, they're still delusional in a lot of their points.
Right.
Or what they're saying is, we don't really believe this, but nobody's buying what we're selling, so we've got to sell something different.
Yeah.
Rappaport seems to be and I don't think we're using him because we're saying that Hollywood is going in this direction, but I do think he can be used as a microcosm of where people have gone, where Democrats went who voted for Trump, where independents are going who went for Trump.
Yeah.
And so it first started out in New York City, and then what really converted him was when he decided to do some investigation because he thought Trump was a racist based on Charlottesville. And so he actually went and said, well, what did Trump actually say? And he realized at that point he was being lied to.
Right.
And then he started investigating other things coming from Democrats and said, they're lying to me. Well, he spent a lot of time in Hollywood because he's an actor. And this is him yesterday. And the reason that I think one of our listeners sent this to us is because he talks about Gavin Newsom's hair so much, and that's one of the first things that we talked about. I think it was me who first said, if he thinks that Pat Riley slicked back, L.A. Lakers when he was coach back in the late 80s, early 90s, if he thinks that's going to get him elected president, maybe it will. And then he opened his mouth where he stood on the issues, and then we saw his numbers, and then he did the debate with DeSantis and got smoked big time.
Yeah.
But here it is, and I find his transformation really interesting because I wonder how many Americans are right where he is, right now over the last couple of years.
Good hair. Gavin with the good hair. Newsom. You thought you were going to be president. You're never, ever, ever going to be president, Gavin with the good hair. I don't care how slicked back it is. I don't care. Like you got your aviator glasses and you stand up straight. And I'm Gavin with the good hair. Little Nancy's good old little nephew. Aunt Nancy, she told me this, and she told me when you're speaking, I speak with my hands, and sometimes I start doing shoulder gestures. Gavin with the good hair, you have overseen two of the most important cities in California, and you've ran them, nosedived them into the ground. San Francisco is apocalyptic. I've been there. I've seen it with my own eyes. You ran that gorgeous, iconic, totally unique American city into the ground. It's a dump pot, a cesspool. I've seen it with my own eyes. Why you did this, why you let this happen, I don't care what the reason or rationale is. You did it. Beautiful, fantastic San Francisco, here I come. Why would anybody want to go to San Francisco now? It's scary. The shopping, the whole deal, you ruined the whole place. Needle Park, San Francisco, and you turned Los Angeles. That's one of the reasons I was going to leave anyway, because I'm a native New Yorker. I feel comfortable in New York. But you let Los Angeles turned into a dump hole also. It's dirty. There's holes everywhere.
There you go. And he continues on, just on and on and on for, a long time, just, railing against Newsom. Part of the big debate, coming up is Republicans saying, look, if we're going to give billions to Los Angeles, there needs to be conditions.
Yeah.
And the left has said, what do you mean conditions? Now you're putting conditions on it? Are we going to put conditions on Florida? When a hurricane hits for the people that build on the beaches? Well, you haven't been paying attention to conservatives for the longest time that have asked the question, okay, if you wish to build on the beaches and you're rich,
right,
and you can't get insurance, why should other people be subsidizing your insurance?
Right.
If you pay the full freight of it, well, then go do whatever you want. But that question's been asked. The problem that we're now facing, even with disasters, is what the ROI, return on investment, is now the big question. You and I we did it earlier in the show. The debt for the first quarter of the year is up 40% from last year. If it continues at this pace, the new debt for this fiscal year would be almost $3 trillion.
Yep.
The interest on the debt, $1.2 trillion.
Yep. Just the interest.
In fact, they expect that the interest will be $1.2 trillion.
Right.
They're not sure. I mean, it could be anywhere between $2 and $3 trillion on the actual debt, but because of the interest rates, the interest rates and what has to be paid back in Treasury bills, they predicted right now $1.2 trillion just interest.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Interest.
Yep.
Alone. So now everything that you add to the debt, unless you can pay for it, number one, is going to add to that, and also is going to add to inflationary pressures.
Yep.
And so things are going to be different over the next, from now on.
Yeah, there's no way around it.
Because we've gotten to that point, as we've called it, we would eventually reach it, and I think we're at the very, very beginning of it, the circle of debt doom.
Yeah.
You just acquire so much debt, you can't get out of it.
Right.
And then the interest payments get out of control. And then you keep spending without being able to pay for it.
Yep.
The economy starts suffering. You don't have the tax receipts. The interest rates keep going up because you got to sell more Treasury bills.
Mm-hmm.
And then the government will probably decide again, well, we don't have enough people buying it. We can't have the interest rate that great. So we need to start buying our own debt, which then adds to inflation again, which then adds to interest rates increase down the road.
Right. It's the vicious cycle.
Yeah. And so, that question's going to be asked whether it's in a conservative state or a red state that experiences hurricanes, and people say, well, why are we rebuilding homes? Why is there federal flood insurance? Why isn't the freight being paid fully by the people that build there through their insurance premiums?
Right.
And then for Los Angeles, it's like, unless you come up with something different to stop these fires, unless there's a plan that we can see, or not to stop,
to
mitigate, to manage. Right.
That's what you're looking to do, is manage the response to the fires.
Right.
Better manage your water. Start there. Because you have to look, what is insurance? Insurance is assessing the risk. And when the risk is great, the insurance costs more. That's how it works. And you have to ask yourself, okay, why is the risk so great? Well, the conditions. Things you can and things you can't control. Santa Ana winds, you cannot control. Water, you can manage that a hell of a lot better.
But
the brush, thinning out the brush.
Thinning out the brush, controlled burns, And you're talking about major control burns and clearing out the brush.
Right.
Like never been done before. Now, if you talk about the antiquated water system, well, California's been blowing billions and billions of dollars on things where there is no return on the investment.
Right.
By the way, reparations, people, that's done.
Yeah, that's over.
That's over.
Yep.
But they keep saying, well, it's antiquated. It's we can't afford to build. Well, you're spending hundreds of billions of dollars. Oh, high-speed rail, gone. Bye. And as it was Barry Weiss, the former liberal writer from the New York Times. What Democrats don't understand is government exists to provide basic protections to people. When you live in an area like Los Angeles, that means you're prepared for wildfires and you have police to protect people from crime. You failed on both.
Yep.
You can't provide the minimal things, yet you want to get into all these, niche liberal, support these niche liberal narratives out there of let's do this and spend it on DEI or over here or this or that, that or this. And you're not focusing on the basic mission of government. And so, you're going to see that. There are conditions.
Yep.
There needs to be conditions. We're just not going to rebuild anywhere.
Right.
And have the same thing happen again in 10 years.
See, there has to be an entire set of policies that change going forward in California and water management in general, not just fighting wildfires. Sustaining life.
Water management in general.
Sustaining life.
Energy.
Right.
We've got to stop. I mean, how much have they thrown down? Holman Jenkins, maybe we'll get to it tomorrow, end of the climate delusion.
Right.
Goes and says all these hundreds of billions of dollars that California has spent has made no difference whatsoever.
Right.
By liberal studies have made no difference.
Right.
If you're worried about the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere or global warming gases, if that's your concern, it hasn't done a damn thing.
Right.
Hasn't done anything.
Right.
You're throwing money down the toilet.
Right. And they keep saying the same thing when you tell them, you do the study on it and you look at the fact that nothing has changed. Well, that means we're not doing enough.
Enough, exactly. So you keep throwing more money down the toilet.
Yeah, that's exactly where they'll go with it. Of course.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio, and he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Ready for this one?
All right.
According to a new poll conducted by the Progressive Democrats of America.
Yeah.
So we might look at this and say, okay, are there any biases here?
All right.
Andrew Cuomo was projected to win a ranked choice Democratic primary for New York City mayor, despite not officially entering the race. The poll shows Cuomo with 32% of first-choice voters among likely candidates. In the simulated ranked choice scenario, Cuomo would secure victory in the fifth round with 51% of the votes. Mayor Adams, out of it. Because even in the first round, Mayor Adams would only get 6%. So they want Cuomo back.
Yeah.
Why? Do they believe he can reduce the elderly population in New York and then there'd be less social services and therefore the city will thrive?
Not from a lack of trying.
That's critics of the poll, including Adams' campaign insiders,
they called up and said, hey, wait a minute.
Let's find critics of the poll. Let's go to the Adams campaign.
We know some people that'll have a problem with this poll.
argue it oversamples liberal voters and questions its accuracy in reflecting the broader Democratic electorate.
Is it possible to oversample in this case liberal voters? What? What does that even mean?
In New York City?
I don't even know that that's possible. I don't think that's possible. I think that's highly impossible. Yeah. All right. Well, then I guess Mayor Adams with the no hair may be done soon.
Well, we'll know if he's seriously considering it because he'll be on News Nation with his brother.
Well, wait for it.
Or will they allow that to happen again?
I don't know.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.